Hello guys and welcome back. So in this section we'll talk about services, what are their uses and how exactly can we create them and use them. Okay, so Angular services are simply TypeScript classes that you can decorate with an injectable decorator, and that tells Angular that these are services and then they can be injected, and they can also inject other services or other things as dependencies in them. Okay, so services, we decorate these TypeScript classes with an injectable decorator so that we can allow these classes to inject other services as well as dependencies in them. Okay, so generally services are used to share the same piece of code that we have across multiple files in an application. It is used to hold some business logic. Then it is used to interact with the backend. So if you want to make Ajax calls, then you can place the methods to those calls in a service basically, and then use inject the service as a dependency in multiple files and use them. And you can also use it to share data across multiple components. Now in Angular, services are singletons, so there is just one instance of a service that gets created, and that same instance is used by each and every building block in the Angular application. So a service can be registered as a part of a module, or it can be registered as a part of the component itself. Uh, to register it as a part of component, you'll have to specify it in the providers array of the module. But if you want to register it on a component and thereby create a new instance of that service, then you'll have to add it to the providers array of the component. Okay, so let's say how we can use these concepts that we have in our application so far. So right now I have an application. Let's just see what it looks like. So this is a very simple application wherein I have a list of users, and each of the user has an ID. So if I navigate to one of the users, by navigating to it using child parameters like ID, then I'll see the details of that particular user in this right hand side section. So if I change the user here, then the details gets changed. Okay, now so far what we are doing to do this is we have created the three components here: the users, that contains the list of those users. Okay, and then each of the user here is the link that we see, uh, or the list item in this users list is eventually a component of the user um class. Okay, here. And then we have the user details, which presents the details of a particular user. Okay, and then we have implemented routing. So if I open up my app routing module, then I have these routes specified here with this configuration. Each has a path, and for the user's path we are navigating, or we are loading up the user's component inside the router outlet, while for the user slash id path we are loading up the user details component. For just the user's route we are loading up the placeholder component, and for every other route we are simply redirecting the users to the user's path, like so. Okay, now we have used these routes in the call to the for root method of the router module, and then we have exported this router module. We have imported this app routing module inside my app module, like so. Okay, and that's how I'm able to use it in my app component. Okay, so I've specified a router outlet here and an app header here inside my app component, and that's what we see. This is the header, and this is the contents that are being loaded up on the router outlet. And the initial router outlet, or the parent router outlet, first loads up the user's list. Okay, which eventually has another router outlet in it, which loads up the components for child routes. Okay, so now in here I have the users list right here inside my users component. Whenever I select a particular user and the user details component is loaded, I have a similar list on the user details component as well. So what I'm doing here is, through the activated route I'm fetching up the parameters, and through the parameters I'm fetching up the user ID. and then filtering the users list that I have here based on that user ID to eventually get the selected user, and then I'm using this user to show the details on the template like so. Okay, and this is how it's behaving right now. So when on selecting a particular user, I'm seeing their details. Okay, but the issue here is that we have this list of users that's common to both the user details and the users component, but then this is redundant. Okay, so services can be used in this case wherein we'll simply move the users list to a service. We'll inject that service as a dependency in both the users component as well as the user details component, and then we will simply share data between them using that. Okay, so let's create a service first. To create a service, I'll use Angular CLI, and I'll use the command ng g for generate s for service, and I'll create a services folder first, inside which I need to create a user service which would be created inside a user folder. So this is the services folder, this would be the user folder, and inside this the user service will eventually get created. Okay, so let's wait for that to get created, and it created a services folder inside which it also created a user folder. And then it created two files, the user service and the user services test case file. Now if I wanted to use this service on the app module, I'll have to first inject it, or I'll first have to add it to the providers array so that this particular module knows that there is a service that can be injected. So user service is something that I'll add here. I'll also have to import it from its respective path. Okay, I'll save this now, and in the users component I'll simply cut the users list that I have here. Okay, I'll cut this, or I'll simply say copy this as of now and save it. Okay, and in the user service, this was the code that was created for me by Angular CLI. Okay, I'll paste this users here, and this would be of private type. Okay, and I'll have to import iUsers, which is an interface. Okay, and now I'll create two methods here, get users, which would return iUser array like so. So I'll return this dot users. Okay, now since this users is private and it's a naming convention that we should specify an underscore before a private field, that's what I'll be using here. Okay, and then this is something that can be used inside the users component to get the list of users. So I'll inject this service as a dependency, so private user service, which is of type user service. I'll also import it from its respective path, and now in the ng on init I'll initialize this dot users equal to this dot user service dot get users like so. Okay, so far so good. Now I have the list of users. Let's go back and reload our application to check how it's behaving. So I can still see the list of users here, and if I select a particular user, then I'm still able to see the details of that user on the right hand side. Okay, now I'll do the same thing for user details as well. So I'll just get rid of the users because I don't really want that. Okay, now instead of again fetching all the users here, I can simply create a method in this that would be named get user by ID. This will receive an ID in the form of number, and then this method should return a user from here itself. Okay, and then in here I'll simply filter out the users. I'll get a user such that user dot ID is equal to the ID that I got here, and this is going to return to me an array of users. But since the IDs are unique, I'm expecting that the first element in this array should return me the exact user that I wanted. Okay, so if I save this now, and then in here, instead of using this as this, we can simply inject the user service as a dependency, like so. Okay, and then I can simply copy this from here, paste it here, and call the get user by ID, and then I'll pass it params of ID. I'll place a plus sign over here because the params.id is an object, and the ID that gets returned from this object would be in the form of a string. So to convert it into a number, I'm specifying a plus sign before it. Okay, so if I save this now and go back to the application, I'll still see that it's working as expected and as before. Okay, so this is how what we did is we just removed all the data that was hard coded in the user details as well as in the in the user details as well as in the users component, and I abstracted that data in a single service right here, and then I used this service, injected it as a dependency in the users as well as the user components in the user details component to get the data in both these. Okay, so this is one of the use case wherein a service is quite essential and crucial, and that's how you can use it. In the next video, we'll actually get this data from a server, and then we'll basically make AJAX calls to get the details of a particular user from there. Okay, so I'll see you guys on the next video. Bye.